You've probably clicked on the video and thought, Chimaeron Heroic, what tips and tricks could possibly help us kill a boss that is not even that difficult? Well, yeah, it's going to be a quick one, but if you haven't seen the other videos, check them out. There should be 2 or 3 bosses done so far, and I'm working through all 13 of them over the next week or so they're going to come thick and fast. But believe it or not, in all the groups I've done this with, raiding on 5 or 6 characters, doing 10 and 25 Heroic a week, there's 1 or 2 things that we do differently now that really make this fight even easier than it was before. So rather than giving you a full boss guide or anything like that, I'll run over all the basics just in case it's the first time you're seeing Chimaeron Heroic, but this is not a full guide, it's more tips and tricks just to help you get cleaner kills or get your first kill. Now this really is a tank and healer fight, so if you've got good tanks and you've got good healers, you're probably not going to have an issue. The thing is, the first tip that I'm going to give you will revolve around your tanks, and actually, it makes the tanking an absolute joke. But the basics are, you want to spread out for Caustic Slime, because Caustic Slime's got a 6-yard range, so you want to be spread out 6 yards so only you're getting hit. Now, this is only relevant when the robot is online. When it's offline, this is part of the reason you stack him. The boss does a double attack, which is something that most tanks taunt for, and it also has Break, which increases the physical damage taken by 25%, and reducing healing done by 15% for a minute. This stacks and is what makes the double attack pretty much destroy your tank. Now, what most people do is they have one person taunting for the break stacks, another person taking double attacks, and kind of just hoping that no one dies. Well, before we go any further, I might as well just give you my first tip straight away, because it's all around the tanking, and it actually came out of a podcast that we had a couple of weeks ago, and as soon as we started doing it ourselves, it made life so easy. Basically, you just need one tank that's going to tank non-feud and one tank that's going to tank feud. So every time he does a massacre, which is a raid-wide damage, it's got a chance of knocking the robot offline, which is when you can be killed. While the robot's alive, as long as you've got more than 10k health, you cannot die. This is why I said it's a healer fight as well as a tank fight, because all the healers should be doing is making sure that people have got just enough health to not get one shot. So basically, as long as everyone's over 10k, the healer can stand there doing pretty much nothing. The thing is, when Massacre goes off and it knocks the robot offline, now everybody's going to stack in one place, and this is to split the damage of the Caustic Slimes. Because if you get hit on your own with no robot up, it does about 250,000 damage, so you want that shared across the group. Now this is where your second tank comes in. To take the tip that I'm going to give you, you need ideally a Blood DK tank as one of your tanks, but you can also make it work as a Feral Druid, which I've done myself now. But when a double attack's about to come in the non-feud state, so when the robot's online, as long as you've got a Blood Shield on you, or you've got basically any absorb, one of them double attacks will take the shield first. And the second of the double attack obviously is going to be saved by the robot. So this means that you can just have one Blood DK tank, or as I say, you can make it work as a Feral Druid, but you need to have your timing really well because it is a bit more RNG. Just solo tank everything outside of feud. Now this means you've got one tank that's completely free of break stacks for the feud. Now of course that second tank's still going to get slapped, and they will get break stacks during the feud. But as long as before the tank gets a break stack they use a 20% damage reduction, so in this case we've got a Feral tank who will use Bark Skin, and then as soon as he gets a break stack, he'll use Survival Instincts, which is a 50% DR. We've found that that off tank just does not die. So again, when there's no break stack during the feud, 20% damage reduction. When there is, a big 50% damage reduction, or even call for a pain suppression or an external of some description as well. The only time this gets a little bit rough is actually if you get 2 massacres knock the robot off back to back, which is unlikely, but it does happen. Because when this happens, the feud tank hasn't dropped his stacks yet. Then it kind of gets a bit rough. The tank's probably going to die. You're going to res him. He's going to taunt, and you'll just do everything the same as normal. But as long as you don't get the robot knocked off twice back to back, there's no issue at all. It gives enough time for the break stacks to drop off of the tank that's tanking the feud. Now, the reason this makes it easy is because there's none of this tank swapping and then it going wrong, and now you've got 2 tanks with break when you was only meant to have 1 tank with break. It's literally tank A tanks the boss all the time, at all times, unless the robot goes off and everyone's stacked. When the robot goes off and everyone's stacked, the second tank's going to take over, 20% damage reduction with no break stacks, 50% with break stacks. Go back to normal. Now, the second part to this, which is important, is that second tank being topped as soon as you go into the feud. So we've got 2 paladins normally, which is a holy paladin and a rep paladin. We know we're only going to get 2 feuds, so we're only going to stack up twice anyway. So as soon as we go into the first one, we have the holy paladin use their lay on hands on the second tank, And then as soon as we go into the second one, we have me as the rep paladin, use my lay on hands on the tank. This means for the first couple of hits now, all of the healers can focus on topping the raid up, getting them to like 40-50%. That's all they need to be on, and that's really safe. And then spam heal that second tank. Where most people go wrong here is they panic and they actually think the raid healing is more important than the tank healing, but it's the complete opposite. Splitting the damage of those caustic slimes amongst the raid, it doesn't do mass amounts of damage. Keeping your tank on 100% health during the feud at all times is far more important. If your whole raid has got about 30% health, you'll probably find you're not going to lose anyone. So between big attacks coming in from the boss, just always make sure your tank's on 100% health. And if you're the tank and you haven't got a personal cooldown for some reason, use an external. Of course, another important aspect of this as well is when you're stacked up is to use raid cooldowns, but there's one raid cooldown you don't want to use because it is really grief, and that's Spirit Link. Now, you can use Spirit Link if the tank that's tanking the feud is stood out of the group, but if he's stood with the group, you don't want a Spirit Link, because I've seen so many times where a tank gets topped off, they're fully healthy, a shaman puts Spirit Link down, now that tank's back on like 70% and they get one shot. So be very careful with Spirit Link usage if your tank is standing within that Spirit Link totem. But everything else you want to be using a Priest Bubble if you've got one. Aura Master is pretty useless unless you're going to use it with Dev Aura because it does nature damage, which Resistance Aura and AM won't be affected by. Making sure you've got down a nature res totem for this whole fight is obviously a must as well. Honestly, the big healing cooldowns are the best ones during this anyway. Using Divine Hymn, using Trank. If you've got a Feral DPS for some reason, get them out, do a Trank. Get a Shadow Priest to do a Divine Hymn. It's just basically get as much healing out on everyone as possible. And then the next tip is all about the push. How you get a clean kill on this boss is all about how you push the 20% health. This is when he goes into the last phase where no one can now receive healing, but absorbs do work. So if you've got a priest, they should literally just start spam bubbling everyone like they're a Wrath Disc priest again. And it's all about kill the boss before you die. Now, there's a lot of things you can do to help this, but first, the actual transition itself. It doesn't matter whether you do this before a feud, after a feud, when you're spread, when you're stacked. Of course, if you're stacked, it means you can get everyone topped off before you go into the last phase. But the most important thing is to do it between massacres. So at the moment, you can see we're on 23%. We know we've got lots of time before another caustic slime, lots of time before another massacre. So we want to get people topped off using health stones, externals, raid healing, everything, and then push the boss. This particular one you're looking at weren't the cleanest of pushes, to be fair, but it is an alt run. But you want to look at your timers, look at the boss's health. If he's on like 25% and you know you've got 20 seconds before the next massacre, you know all you need to do is spot heal the people that are getting hit by caustic slime, and then push the boss before the next massacre. Again, I see lots of groups push the boss directly after a massacre, and then everyone dies because no one's got any health. The key to success on Chimaeron is your tank setup and how they're handling the boss, and pushing the boss to 20% at the right time. The right time being at a time when massacre's not coming in and you've got plenty of time to heal everyone up. At that point, everybody should self-heal. So that's another tip if you want it. If you're a rep paladin, if you're a Ellie Shaman, Enhancement Shaman, like any hybrid, a Boomy, if you can heal before you push to 20%, you should be topping yourself off and anyone who stood near you as well. That's about it, really. That's Chimaeron in a nutshell. I know there weren't really a great deal to talk about with Chimaeron because it is quite a simple fight, but those couple of tips that I've given you, that should make sure that you get really smooth kills from now on. So if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.